So as Scott said, my name is Chris Akhavan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Glue. We're best known for games like Kim Kardashian Hollywood, Racing Rivals, Tap Sports Baseball, Cooking Dash, and many others. And if you look at Glue today, actually, something like at least 90% of our studios came to the company at some point in time by way of acquisition. And I think we've done a pretty good job of being very intelligent about how we go about acquiring teams. And that's really what this presentation today is about how we've been able to identify the key ingredients in what is a really good studio team that we believe we can take and grow upon to make that a great studio. And so I'll be sharing some case studies around 3 of our most successful studios and titles, which are the ones you see here. So I'll start with the one that you probably all want to hear about, Kim Kardashian Hollywood. Also talk about our Tap Sports Baseball franchise. And then finally, our most recent launch, which is Gordon Ramsay Dash. And all of 3 of these, I think you'll see, share very similar kind of paths to success. None of these were overnight successes for the studio or for Glue. All right, so let's start with Kim. So that studio actually came to Glue back in 2011. And if you guys were working in mobile games or paying attention to the App Store back then, you probably recognize the game on the right side here. That was a game called Smurfs Village. Did really well, had a very long run in the top grossing charts in the App Store. And so at some point, a number of the key folks on that team decided to leave to start their own studio. And Glue actually acquired them in the early stages and did it in such a way that they had a lot of independence, but at the same time could plug into Glue's central services and distribution power. But from the beginning, we definitely tapped into a team that had very experienced, seasoned leadership with a track record of success. That being said, they did not ship Kim Kardashian Hollywood overnight at all. Kim Kardashian Hollywood came out, I believe, in 2014, and as I mentioned before, the studio was acquired in 2011, so that gives you a sense of the multi-year process that it actually took to get to that point. They shipped a number of games, including the ones you see here, Zombies Ate My Friends, Knights of Puzzle-Lot, even a game called Campers, which ranged from modestly successful to total flops. But the important thing is along the way, that experienced leadership team learned from every single update, every single launch, and continuously refined and improved what they were doing. And the other key thing is they really stayed focused on the casual genre, and over time started to really narrow in and hone in on what we call narrative RPG. And that led to the Stardom franchise. Cool. So if you've played Kim Kardashian Hollywood, that probably looked pretty familiar to you. And that's because that was the core engine that Kim was built on. And again, Stardom was around for a while, so the team, through the course of multiple Stardom launches, really refined that engine, understood what drove retention, monetization, and ultimately built something that was in a good position to really take it to the next level, of course, in partnership with the best possible personality we could have found for this type of game with Kim. Highly engaged, active audience, 150 million plus social followers, and of course, a reality TV show viewed by millions every week. People are always interested in what she's doing. Again, highly engaged audience. So applying her to that highly refined narrative RPG engine the studio was working on is what unlocked a very big blockbuster hit. All right, some fun stats on this game. I mean, it's had well over 40 million downloads, 3.3 billion sessions in the game, 11.9 billion flights taken in this game. Wired recently actually put out this article with the title that says that people have spent over 30,000 years playing Kim Kardashian Hollywood. So by all measures, a very, very successful title, I think a pioneering title in the mobile games industry. But as you can see, this did not happen overnight. It was, again, experienced leadership team with a dedication and focus on their genre and a commitment to multi-year refinement. All right, next I'll share a case study on Tap Sports Baseball, which I think you'll see has similar themes to the story I just shared about Kim. The studio behind Tap Sports Baseball also came to Glue by way of acquisition. This was back in 2013. So we met this small indie studio, probably 4 people at the time, but again, very experienced, seasoned leadership that had come from companies like EA and Zynga and Digital Chocolate. And what we really liked about them is that they were focused on the sports genre. So the game you see there on the right is a game that they were working on with that small team called Your Turn Football, which was really the building blocks for the Tap Sports franchise. Because you can see very simple gameplay. The concept was everything should be mobile friendly, playable with just one thumb, and all about asynchronous PvP, so a very social game by nature. And that turned out to be a definite diamond in the rough for us. And so acquired the team, helped them scale up and plug into Glue's infrastructure. And given the way the seasons were lining up, we decided to do baseball first and not football, which turned out to be a good thing because we didn't have Madden to compete with. So the team put out Tap Sports Baseball in beta. I think the first one went live in, I think it was 2014 season. And so we put this game live initially without the actual real players in the game. I was personally working on finishing up the MLB-PA license deal so we can get the real players in. And the initial KPIs looked okay, but not great. So a lot of us were nervous, like, is this game gonna work? Fortunately, we signed that deal. We updated the game quickly with real players and immediately unlocked the power of real personalities, which not surprisingly had a big impact on this game's trajectory. This is the current season's version of the game. You can see we have Chris Bryant as our highlight player, big rising star in the league. But back when we first put real players in the game in 2014, this is what we saw immediately in that Canada beta. Overnight, there was a 52% improvement in LTV. Over here, I'm obviously not sharing the actual LTV numbers, but these are 14-day LTV curves. And as you all know, moving LTV is incredibly hard, and to see a 52% move like that overnight is just huge, and really positioned that game to go on and become really successful. And since then, the team has, again, year after year, been refining this engine, this game, and each version of this game is done better than the prior year's version. So as I mentioned, this has been the #1 baseball game in franchise since we launched it. Here's what the top grossing ranks have looked like for the current season's version of the game. You can see that right after launch, it jumped into the top grossing, and it's been basically sitting in the top 50 for the entire season, which is just awesome for us and for the studio. And again, just like Kim, this was a situation where we had those 3 key ingredients that I'll keep repeating, like experienced leadership team, a very committed focus to their genre, and also a commitment to multi-year refinement. All right, finally, I wanted to share the story behind a game we launched recently, which is Gordon Ramsay Dash, part of the very long and storied Dash franchise, which actually came to Glue back in May of 2014 when we acquired Play First, a company that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, been around for a very long time. Play First had put out games back in the downloadable PC era. Largely, their games were premium or just try-buy, where you could play a few levels for free and then purchase the rest of the game. So again, very long track record there, a successful engine, an experienced leadership team. But the studio was a bit slow in making the transition from PC to mobile, and then more specifically into mobile free-to-play. They were a bit late on that transition. So when Glue came along and met with them, they were kind of not in a great position, but we saw those key ingredients that we always look for there, so we decided to acquire this studio and give them the support and infrastructure they needed to make that transition successfully. And since then, it's been a multi-year evolution. So we launched the first truly free-to-play Diner Dash game back in 2014. The studio followed that up with a very successful game called Cooking Dash 2016, which launched in 2015. And then more recently, we launched the Gordon Ramsay Dash game with, of course, I think the best celebrity chef you could possibly partner with for a cooking game. And so I wanted to highlight what that journey has looked like for the studio. And so first, let's look at Diner Dash, the first free-to-play Diner Dash. This one had a decent start, but quickly faded out of the top 500 grossing. So I think everyone involved was not really happy with the performance of this game. But again, with the experienced leadership team that was really committed to the Dash engine and refining from the learnings, from the wins and the losses, they really doubled down and focused and used this as a great learning opportunity to massively accelerate what they were doing. And they baked all of those learnings into Cooking Dash 2016, which looks like a very different story. You can see this game came out in summer of 15, and pretty much since then, very steady long tail, sitting generally between the top 100 and 150 grossing. A very successful title for the studio, and only possible because that team didn't give up. They used the initial not so great Diner Dash launch to learn, refine, and deliver a very tight, very well-performing game. And then building on that, we entered into a partnership with Gordon Ramsay to try to apply a larger-than-life personality with huge global reach to an already successful engine, and that's what Gordon Ramsay Dash is. Definitely the most epic trailer that Glue's probably ever put out. If you want to learn more about the marketing behind that one, talk to Sangeeta, who worked very closely on that title. So again, here what you'll see are similar ingredients to the prior two titles that I shared with Kim and Tap Sports Baseball. I mean, the story for the Dash Studio followed the same path. Again, experienced leadership team with a passion and dedication to their genre and engine, and a commitment to multi-year refinement. And so these are three key things that we look for anytime we evaluate a potential acquisition. We're not the company that goes out and does these huge deals. We tend to be more focused on opportunities like this, where we see big potential that hasn't necessarily been fully unlocked to the full extent. And when we see these three ingredients, that gives us a lot of confidence that we have a team that we can work with closely and build on top of year after year after year.
So commitment to multi-year refinement. Sometimes a game is just a dog, man, and you know that, and I know that. When do you know to shoot the dog?
Good question. So when do we know to just give up? I mean, I think generally we have a good sense of like if the KPIs are close but not quite there, right, versus being just way off. Like, so if we launch a game and it has 20% next day retention, and we have a team that doesn't seem to have a clear plan to recover from that, or kind of a lot of passion and focus and dedication, that is the kind of situation where you probably would throw in the towel and say this is not worth cycling on. So I think for us, it's again like we want to see that there's that commitment to learning, but also that we're not so far off from KPIs that are viable that we're wasting our time. And in all these cases, that's what you had, is like initial games that were performing well. They were not necessarily blockbuster hits, but they were not total failures either. So they were kind of in that zone where we knew, like, apply that extra polish, that extra attention, those extra learnings, and you can get this from being a mediocre title to something that's truly a hit.
If you could just toss out some benchmarks. So 20% is bad. Like, what are some benchmarks that you would consider, hey, this is worth committing to multi-year refinement?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, fundamentally it comes down to like what is the LTV CPI equation like anything else. So it really depends on the genre. Like if we're dealing with a casual game though, like retention below 40% is going to be a big red flag for us. Whereas if it's a more hardcore game, if we're seeing retention 35, 40%, we'll view that as healthy. So I mean, deeper retention, obviously looking for robust day 30, hopefully north of 10, 12%. Again, depends on the genre, but that's, I'd say, the rough ranges that we're looking for.
And when you're tossing out the 40%, you mean day 2, right?
Next day, yeah, day after install.
Just a quick question. I'm from Europe, and awesome what you've done with the American celebrities. Is there any plans for you guys to enter into any European celebs like Ronaldo in soccer, or Lionel Messi, or in the Southeast Asia, in South America? Is there any European celebs that you identified that could draw this kind of gameplay to?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is, have we looked at European personalities like a Ronaldo? Yeah, definitely we've explored those type of opportunities. And we're open to that, and Europe is a huge market. But I think fundamentally we've for now decided to stay focused on mostly Western markets where we know we can be best in the world. I mean, I think we could succeed in Europe more than Asia, which has become very hyper-local and competitive. So overall, I'd say like we're mostly focused on our core markets, and not at this point not really looking to make a big bet outside of the core markets. But again, if the right opportunity presented itself, we're certainly open to that.
I just want to point out that I'm available for Scott Foe's Master of Ceremonies dash if you want to make that.
What was the biggest crossover that you had coming from an analytics platform like Tapjoy that really helped you optimize these games with global brands? Was it nuance? Was it strictly quantitative? Like, what was the biggest?
Yeah, I mean, my Tapjoy time, so I was there for 3.5 years, like going back to when it was 10 people in a small room, and was part of that company growing to where it is today, which was an awesome ride. During my time there, the company did not have the analytics piece that it has today. It was a very specifically focused on a mobile ad network that was built around the rewarded model. And so what that meant for me is I got to work with pretty much everybody in the mobile game space and just beyond that, the mobile app space in general, and to see how different companies were handling performance marketing, UA, and ad revenue, and optimizing that entire funnel. And so that was very directly relevant for me as I went over to Glue and took all of those best practices and all that knowledge to one studio and really helped focus on building out proper UA at Glue, leveling up the company's ad revenue, which we've done with Brian and Kelly back there. And so yeah, it was very directly relevant.
Hey there. You talked a little bit about how Glue, the central entity of Glue, supports these studios. Could you maybe expand about just how that relationship works? Like, what kind of support are you giving these?
So how do we support our studios?
Yeah, like how much of it is guidance? How much of it is have you got someone embedded in these studios? How does that work?
Yep. So the way we're structured is our headquarters in San Francisco is kind of the central hub, and the only studio we have in that office is our Dash studio, actually. But besides that studio, every other studio at Glue is in a different location, from Portland to San Mateo to Long Beach, Beijing, Moscow, Toronto, Seattle, a number of other locations. So we definitely are very distributed. And so what we offer our studios is that central hub of services in San Francisco, which ranges from ad revenue to UA, Claudia in marketing, Eddie Claudia in PR, Eddie in marketing, a number of other folks like that that cover pretty much everything outside of core game development and allow the studios to just remain very hyper-focused on making amazing games and letting the central teams cover all the distribution opportunities, marketing opportunities, even BI analysis. We also have a team that handles cross-platform development. So our studios largely only develop in iOS and hand it off to a specialized cross-platform team that's going to take their build and optimize it for the wide range of Android handsets out there and also the Android SDKs. So that's really how we work with them, is like provide as many services as possible, so at the end of the day, they're only focused on creating the best game they can. In addition to that, obviously we share learnings across the company, so if one studio's learned some particular monetization technique that's working well, we'll share that across all of our studios. And provide some central oversight. There's also a central milestone process that all of our studios go through to make sure that development is on track and looking good.
Hi, Chris. You've obviously got celebrity-based games there, and obviously advertising is a big part of monetization. Have you ever thought about putting brands within the game and within gameplay?
So instead of making a game just for a brand, but instead putting brands inside of our games? Yeah, we've actually done quite a number of those type of integrations. So, like with Racing Rivals, for example, we did a partnership with the WWE, and we had like wrestlers enter the game and had wrestler-themed cars showing up, and that did really well. With Deer Hunter, we had Under Armour show up in that game for a special hunting event. They have a big hunting line of apparel. And Kim's been big for us for those kind of integrations. Just beyond having Kim as the face of the game, there's been a lot of brands that have entered that game, ranging from Karl Lagerfeld to Judith Lieber Couture. What else? Like a bunch of others that Claudia knows very well. And so yeah, I mean, I think that's also been part of our strategy, is finding those good fits to bring brands into our existing games.
And would a brand typically pay a one-off fee based on a projected number of downloads, or would that be an ongoing payment if the game blew up and continued?
So you're asking about just the economic arrangement of those? So brand integrations can range from deals where a brand is paying us up front to be in that game. Basically, it's just kind of a marketing opportunity for that brand. We've also done deals where they're treated more like cross-promotion, where like a brand is going to give us a lot of promotion through their different channels in exchange for us promoting that brand through the game. There are certain deals where you might have royalties involved on the purchase of a particular brand's items in the game. So yeah, we've been pretty flexible on the model. It's really like kind of case by case, depending on whether a brand's cross promo power to point to the game is actually strong enough to justify doing the integration just for that, or if it's more of a deal where we need to see some kind of upfront payment from the brand to make it make sense for us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the one, the only, the great disc golfer, Chris Akhavan.